Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our discussion about reducing emissions in your community, brought to you by CML and Clean Energy for the Region. Before we get started, I want to go over some housekeeping items. You'll see to the right, you'll see the webinar panel. This is where you'll be able to ask questions, and I'll be monitoring those questions throughout the presentation. And we'll be asking them at the end. And if we're not able to get to your question, we absolutely will follow up with you after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll make the recording and presentation materials available to you after the webinar. So please keep an eye out for a follow-up email from me. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our partners, our great speakers today at the Clean Energy for the Region.
Hi there, thank you so much. My name is Zuleika Pevic. I am the Colorado Clean Diesel Program Manager and the Clean Energy Program Manager at CLEAR. So today I'm presenting on the Colorado Clean Diesel Program, reducing emissions in your community with the Colorado Clean Diesel Program, statewide grants for heavy fleet electrification. If you can go to the next slide.
Trying to get them pulled up here.
Oh, sure. We started this with just a little bit of a technical difficulty, so Jennifer's going to be advancing the slides for me.
Okay.
So that's in presenter mode. Can you make it into just the slideshow? Then you don't have to look at my notes.
1 second here.
Thank you all for being here today. I am really excited about this opportunity for municipalities. So this is a statewide grant program, but I feel like it could be particularly helpful for Colorado municipalities. So thank you very much for joining us today.
And I'm sorry, I'm not able to share the non-presenter presentation. So if we're okay, if we can just move from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. You guys can see my notes too. If you can't hear what I'm saying or something. So the Colorado Clean Diesel Program is Colorado's state offering of the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, or DERA, which is a federal program. So the EPA administers DERA, and then states have an opportunity to participate in that funding, so Colorado has, and most states do. And CLEAR, the organization I work for, we're a nonprofit located in Carbondale, and we have a contract with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the CDPHE, to run the Colorado Clean Diesel Program. And it has two funding sources. So one is through the DERA allocated funds from the EPA. The other is a grant or a match program through Colorado's VW diesel emissions settlement. So we get a little bit of extra money because we are able to provide a matching part to those funds. So we get about $800,000 to $900,000 each year for these grants. So you can go to the next slide. So there's typically in other states, states are using these grant funds to replace old diesel engines with new diesel engines that are significantly cleaner, Tier 4 and Tier 4 final engines. In Colorado, we've been asked to focus on hybrid and zero emissions projects. So we have really put effort into trying to find the manufacturers and the organizations that might be interested in electrifying or otherwise purchasing zero emissions equipment. So with this grant funding, if you were to purchase a hybrid piece of machinery, and we've seen that with hybrid bucket trucks that have an electric PTO, so the truck remains diesel, but the PTO is electric. There are hybrid snow groomers, there are hybrid excavators, other hybrid opportunities. We can only fund 25% of that total project cost, and that leaves 75% for the applicant. So this is just a quick, like, if the whole project was about $100,000, we could provide a grant up to $25,000. So next slide, please. But we have been, like I said, really focusing on zero emissions projects, and we can fund up to 45% of that. So a lot of this equipment for fully electric equipment, it's about 50% or maybe sometimes a little bit more expensive than their diesel counterparts. And so the 45% can hopefully offset the cost of that upgrade from diesel to electric. So you still end up paying about the same amount as you would for a new piece of diesel equipment, but you've got a new electric equipment. And keep in mind that the total project cost can also include the charging infrastructure. So if it's fully electric and it needs a charging port, we can fund one charging port per vehicle. And then if it's shore powered, we can help with the infrastructure needed to upgrade the electrical panel or other issues. We can't help getting electricity to the property itself. So if you have, say, a shop that hasn't otherwise needed electricity, so we can't get electricity to the shop, but we can do within what what would be needed within the building to make it usable. Next slide. So these are just some of the eligibility requirements. So you do need to be a Colorado business or entity. You can be an individual, any municipality would qualify, and we do want the piece of equipment to be operating in Colorado because it's a Colorado state grant. If you have to own the piece of equipment that's being replaced, so you can't lease it, unfortunately, it can't be a leased piece of equipment. And then, if it's a piece of equipment or a vehicle that needs to be registered, then it needs to be registered in the state of Colorado. So go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Now, this is kind of the hard sell because it's a replacement reimbursement grant. So you can't use this money to increase the size of your fleet. You have to be willing to completely scrap a diesel piece of equipment. So the equipment that's going to be scrapped needs to be fully operational. It has to have at least 3 years of remaining life left in it. So it can't be one that you're just kind of pulling out from the scrap yard in order to scrap again. It does need to have operated for at least 500 hours in the previous 2 years each. So 500 hours per year for the previous 2 years. And if you're looking at a hybrid replacement, then it needs to be a tier 3 or below. But if you're looking at a zero emissions replacement, it can be any tier level now. So you do have to replace a piece of equipment. It also has to be a like for like replacement. So you can't upgrade necessarily in the size or form or function of the piece of equipment. So if you're looking to do, an excavator, you can't scrap a mini excavator and purchase a larger excavator, something like that. It has to be approximately equivalent. Okay, so go ahead into the next slide. The scrappage requirements are quite specific. So Once you've been awarded the grant, you don't have to scrap anything until you know that you're getting the money. You have 90 days after your new piece of equipment has been delivered to scrap the old piece of equipment. And that includes cutting a 3-inch hole in the engine block and cutting all the chassis rails in half. And so we want to be working with the applicant really closely at this time to make sure that everything is documented properly, that there's not going to be any questions from the EPA about whether the piece of equipment was scrapped properly. And it also gives you that 90 days, also gives you a chance to test the new equipment and make sure it is going to do what you want it to do. It's going to work in your facility or in your town. And so you've got a little bit of time to make sure it's going to work for you. Next slide. And there's, more and more electric machines available now. And so these were just a few that I thought municipalities might be interested in. Zero-turn mowers, front loaders, tractors, excavators, skid steers, light towers. The mobile power units are basically giant batteries on wheels that also have attachments. So if you wanted to just, have kind of one piece of equipment that does it all, those mobile power units are pretty good like that. But we're also, this isn't an exhausted list. There are other opportunities out there. There's other machines, and we're really willing to try to work with every applicant to figure out what would work best. Sometimes in smaller towns, you don't use one piece of equipment enough to cover that 500 hours. So there's an opportunity, for example, to replace, you could scrap 2 small pieces of equipment to replace it with one that would do both jobs. So we're trying to be creative in helping smaller municipalities make this funding work for them. So next slide, please. There's also this very limited amount of time, just till the end of this year, that we can help with on-road pieces of equipment. So typically the DERA funds are available for non-road, the excavators and skid steers and material handlers and things like that. But because right now in Colorado there isn't another source of funding for on-road, we can help with those just until the end of the year. The eligibility requirements are pretty much the same, except that if it's going to be plated for highway use, it needs to be between Class 5 and Class 8. And then instead of that 500 hours per year, it needs to be used 7,000 miles per year for the last 2 years. The scrappage requirements are the same. Next year, sometime in Q1 or Q2, hopefully the Clean Fleet Enterprise will be coming online. I think that it's going to be a more competitive grant, and I don't know the details of it yet. So we're just trying to help. If you're ready to purchase something now, and we've got the money, we'd be happy to help you with that. But like I said, it's very limited time. So next slide, please. So right now, this is not a competitive grant fund. We, because we are focusing on zero emissions, and all the zero emissions technologies in these areas are quite new, people have been hesitant to apply for this money. And so we're not, as long as you meet the EPA requirements, we are not necessarily looking at any of these other evaluation criteria. But as the funding does become more competitive, which we anticipate it will, as the technology matures, we will be looking at these other criteria. So we want to make sure that the emissions reductions per dollar is good. And so if we had 2 grants that we had to choose between, that would be one of the things that we're looking at. We'd love to see innovation and seeing a technology in Colorado for the first time. If an applicant was willing to increase their cost share and not ask for the full 45%, we would consider that, plus the location of the service area of the equipment. And this is kind of one of the most important ones. In general, we want to make sure that we are reducing air pollution in the heaviest impacted areas. But that doesn't mean that all of our mountain towns wouldn't be eligible as well. Like I said, these really are for the when this grant funding becomes a little more competitive. So next slide. We've tried to make the grant application as simple as possible. There's a program guide online that you can read through. It's also not exhaustive as far as technologies go. So if you have a project that you're interested in and it's not on the list, please feel free to contact us and ask us, and we can talk through it with you. And then there's a spreadsheet that just looks at, actually that's on the next slide. So let's go to the next slide. There's a spreadsheet that looks at the details of the new piece of equipment that you're looking to purchase, and then the piece of equipment that you would be scrapping. So it's basic information that most fleets will have, as far as VIN number and how many gallons of diesel are you using every year, and how many years left of life do you think this piece of equipment has, things like that. It should all be pretty straightforward. Next slide. And we do accept applications on a rolling basis. So there's no deadline for the grants. And typically, as long as an application is submitted, when it is submitted, it is complete and we have all the information that we need, we can review it and send it to the EPA and the CDPHE review within a week. So we can turn them around pretty quick. And then once we get the okay from the CDPHE and the EPA, then we send a grant award agreement. And you have 30 days, the applicant has 30 days to sign that to guarantee the funds. And once that is signed, then they can go ahead and purchase the piece of equipment. So whether that's with a PO, or they can just go ahead and do the outright purchase. We need proof of that within 60 days of the grant award agreement being signed. And then once the equipment is delivered, then they have 90 days to scrap the old piece of equipment and send us the proof that it's been scrapped. And after that has been submitted, then we can send a check to the applicant for the grant award agreement, or it's the grant award amount, pardon me. So it can be done quite quick. We have been finding that the longest time in this process is the receiving of the equipment. We have applicants who've been waiting for 2 years for their equipment. We also have applicants who received their equipment within a month of ordering it. So it is, that part we can't control, but all the other pieces on our end can go pretty quickly if applications are complete when we receive them. So that's pretty much it from me. I'm happy to take any questions, and if there's any other details, if you have any specific projects that you have in mind, that specific projects we might want to talk about offline, but you're always, like I said, you have my emails there, phone numbers there. I'd be happy to talk to anyone and answer any general questions as well.
Well, thank you so much for that. I had a request to go back to the eligibility slide.
Sure.
So I'm gonna. Here we go. Let's take a look at that one more time.
Yeah. So really all this is saying is that you don't need to be a Colorado-based business, but you do have to be a business that is working in Colorado. And since probably most of you on this call are municipalities or jurisdictions in some way that would, in Colorado, then that would be you would qualify. We do want the piece of equipment to be working in Colorado. We want the piece of scrapped equipment to be in Colorado, though there is some wiggle room around that. I don't know. You have sister cities that you might want to trade with or something, but we do try to be as creative as we can to help. We have to work within the guidelines that the EPA have set out. We can't change those guidelines at all, but we can be creative in using those guidelines.
All right, and then just back to the grants, that again is on a rolling basis?
Yes, that's correct. So there's no deadline for application.
Mm-hmm.
We will review your application as soon as it is submitted, or very soon after it is submitted, and we can talk through an application beforehand as well to make sure that you have all the information before you start filling out the spreadsheet. And we're available to talk and make it as easy as possible.
Okay, and then a question about what if a vehicle is not registered yet?
I'm not sure. So if it is a plated vehicle, all we are saying is that the vehicle that's being scrapped needs to be registered in Colorado, and then the new piece of equipment also needs to be registered in Colorado. So you'd have Colorado plates on that vehicle.
Okay.
You can leave Colorado if your municipality does cross border border business. I'm not sure how that would work with the municipality, but if you did, that would be fine. It just needs to be registered in Colorado.
Okay. I have another one. Is there any flexibility in the scrappage requirements? For example, can you donate the equipment or donate its parts and submit verification of the donation?
So as long as the diesel engine is not being donated and used as a diesel engine, because these funds are specific to reducing diesel emissions, the engine does need to be destroyed. We have been in talks with EPA about doing a remanufacture of the body of a piece of equipment. So there are some companies who are interested in putting electric motors or hydrogen motors into already pieces of equipment that already exist, and they're just taking the diesel out. So that could be a potential way to do that. Other parts could absolutely be donated as well, as long as there's proof that they're not being just put back into another diesel machine. Since that's the focus of the grant funds.
Okay, and then kind of a follow-up to that. Is there any flexibility on the mileage and operational hours requirement?
Unfortunately, no. And
okay.
So we know that there are a lot of municipalities that don't use their equipment enough. Like, some of our mountain towns just don't have a growing season long enough to use a mower for 500 hours a year. Right. And so we have talked to EPA about that. They won't budge on that. Mm-hmm. But like I said, if there is a way that we can kind of get around that by, maybe scrapping two pieces of equipment for one piece that will do the same job as both. There are some, like that mobile power unit, you can use that for a lot of different things. Skid steers you can use for a lot of different things. So if there's a way that we can add a couple of pieces of equipment together to make up that either the mileage or the hours requirement, then we can do that. But then that also means those two pieces have to be scrapped. And I'm definitely willing to think creatively about this and see if there's a way to make it work. Maybe you have a parks department and a city department that can use the same piece of equipment, something like that, to get the hours. Anyway, I'd love to talk to you more about it. I'm just not sure exactly what the solution is.
Okay, I can connect you all on that offline, and there was a thank you for that. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Looks like that's about it. Again, go ahead.
I was just going to say one last thing, if you're realizing, oh, you know what, this funding isn't going to work for us because of this reason or that reason, or perhaps you think it would work, but you still want to let other people in your community know, it's this funding is open to any business, individual, municipality, jurisdiction in Colorado. And so please feel free to connect your local businesses with us as well. And if there's a construction company that you think would be really interested in having an electric mini excavator or something like that, please connect them with us. We really are just trying to find a home for all this money.
Well, that is great. Thank you so much for presenting today, and thank you all for attending. If there are any other questions, I will absolutely pass them on, and please watch your email for the recording of this webinar. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Feel free to get in touch anytime. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.